Like I remember this, whenever I was a senior, I did this dance singing in the rain thing for Spirit Week or something. And we all had like this like movements choreographed that we had to do. And I was just like half a second off from everybody. And every second, like,
Oh, shit.
I didn't know the beat was. Still don't know the beat.
And we're live with episode 3 of the Nut Club podcast.
Welcome. Welcome.
As you learned just a couple of seconds ago, Jared does dance.
That was high school, yeah.
Not well,
no.
Or you ever
does dance.
My wife is like super music, and I'm a disappointment, I think.
when there was like school dances like prom and homecoming, were you one of the guys that were out there busting a move or what were?
No, definitely not. No.
Oh, I was.
Too insecure to dance like that, I think.
Did you have like a go-to move?
Just being okay looking like an idiot. That's pretty much it. No, I skipped junior prom. We skipped junior prom with camping, right? Was that right?
Yeah, I skipped a lot of school dances actually.
Yeah. Senior prom, I had the flu. So luckily I didn't ask anybody. The girls in my class were not my thing. So
Dude, I think the first year I went to prom, I think it was sophomore year, I got asked by some older girl. But then she ended up ditching me at prom because she got too high off of edibles. And
I did ask an older girl. She turned me down. So it was okay.
that was like the thing in our friend group was like we were trying to go all 4 years. Like to us, that was cool. It was like being able to go because how it worked is only like juniors or seniors could go unless you invited somebody lower. Or not. I don't know if that works like that everywhere. But
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Junior and senior prom is what it is.
Yeah. I was always like, it's funny because older girls are always worried about like being bloated and like eating too much and whatnot.
Yeah, it sounds like bodybuilders.
Yeah. Shit. It sounds like people that take too much creatine, or is that just a myth?
That is just a myth. The creatine water retention myth. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
People think creatine is just water retention, but it's not. Is that what you guys think?
I had no idea.
It's not, but do you want to tell me exactly why water is being retained?
Water, I don't know why the water is being retained. The water is being retained. And so there's a few different ways you can look at it. There's water retention that's intracellular in the muscle cell. That's creatine. That's what it does. There's water retention subcutaneously, which is down into the skin. And that is not creatine's fault. That's a shitty creatine's fault. So there is potentially some water retention with creatine. So if you get a poor form of creatine, like a creatine monohydrate that's not mixed with a sugar, it's not, combined for an insulin spike, it doesn't absorb well, maybe you didn't get it to a soluble form, it can cause water retention in your skin, which is what we would call bloating. It can cause stomach problems, diarrhea, things like that. That's not a creatine. That's more of an absorption problem is what I would call it. Where real creatine, high quality creatine, so like Creagon, from NutriAuthority, is combined with other ingredients to make sure that it absorbs more easily. So you might get a little bit of water retention, but I call it hydrating the muscle cell. It's not water retention in the negative way. You want water retention in the muscle cell because it does help with recovery and it does help with performance. But I think the big problem is that people think creatine is just water retention. Like I think especially whenever I was in high school or college or something like that, or even when I was working in the store, people would come in and say, that's just water retention. You just lose it whenever you stop taking creatine.
It's a classic myth.
But it is a classic myth. So that's not what creatine does, though. It's actually increasing strength, power output. So
kind of sounds like the steroid thing where people are like, oh yeah, steroids are cool, but when you're off them, you just lose it all.
Yeah, that's true.
Like to throw out that the majority of creatine in our industry is just creatine monohydrate in a bottle, baby, nothing else.
Yeah, creatine monohydrate still works. It's just for the average person that's taking creatine. Like if you want the cheapest bang for your buck creatine, go for creatine monohydrate, and it will work. You just have to do different things with it. You want to mix it into a solution in water. Sometimes that means you need to mix it into warm water so that it, salt, when you mix salt into water, it's easier with warm. So you mix creatine, you need to get it into a solution where it absorbs and actually mixes with the water. Then you have to take it with a lot of sugar. So the creatine to get into your muscle needs a driver, something that actually like brings it into the muscle with it. And so that's insulin, which insulin typically drives glucose and stores it as glycogen, the sugars in your blood sugar.
Sure.
And it stores that in your muscles as glycogen, a usable form for later, essentially. And so insulin, if you spike your insulin when you take creatine, it's like a creatine monohydrate, then it will take it. But, that's like the old Celtec kind of products from Muscle Tech. They had like 10 grams of creatine or something, and they also had like 70 grams of sugar. So for a hard gainer or somebody that's, if you're wanting to be cheap and you want to go with a lower quality creatine and go for bang for your buck, you do have to factor in that you're going to take it with a bunch of sugar. You're going to have to spike your insulin levels to get it to absorb. You're probably going to have a little bit more potential for side effects, the water retention in the subcutaneous skin, the bloating in your stomach, the diarrhea potentials, things like that. Dehydration is one of those that's more common with creatine monohydrate because of poor absorbability.
So how does it dehydrate you? If it's like pulling into the muscle cells,
it's not pulling. That would be when it's not pulling into the muscle cells. Yeah. I think that's when it would be causing problems in your stomach and things like that. But it could pull it into the muscle cells, and it wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't feel as hydrated everywhere else, that kind of thing. So water in the muscle necessarily isn't water in, I don't know how it works in the blood, something like that, hydrated in your blood. So you do need to increase water intake a little bit when you're on creatine, but it's more drastic whenever you're taking it as a monohydrate, especially at a high dose. So like Creagon, we use a blend of 3 types of creatine. So creatine monohydrate is one of those types because it works, and it's been the most studied out of all the creatines. But then I use dicreatine malate, and I also use creatine magnesium chelate. One of the problems is stomach acid starts to destroy creatine to some degree, and the magnesium that's bound in creatine magnesium chelate actually stops that from happening in your stomach. And the dicreatine malate absorbs better and also gives a malic acid chain for the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle is the whole reason you're taking creatine in the first place, to increase ATP production, which is the usable energy when you're working out. So it's not
adenosine
energy
triphosphate.
Normally think about it. What's that?
Adenosine triphosphate for those.
Yeah, there you go. It's coming in with the big long technical words. The ATP is like your explosive strength. If you're a football player and you're pushing off the line, ATP is the energy you're going to use. If you're using a bench press, ATP is the energy you're going to use, and you deplete ATP pretty quickly. And so then from one set to another, your body has to, if you're going from one set of bench press to the next set of bench press, your body then has to reproduce that ATP. And that's part of the reason you notice a decrease in performance from set to set to set. And so creatine actually provides the creatine phosphate for the Krebs cycle for ATP production, and that comes in and increases the ATP production. So you can recover faster from set 1 to set 2 and actually increases your strength over the long term. So creatine is really a strength kind of product more than anything else. And if you think about building muscle, it's all about building strength. That's why creatine's so good.
Sure. It sounds like, obviously there's a ton of positives with creatine. Why do you think it had such a negative connotation for so long? Do you think it was just misunderstood, or there wasn't enough research out at the time?
There's plenty of research. People just don't want to know for the most part. I think it's really that people would take it and they would take creatine monohydrate. They would load creatine monohydrate.
Sure.
So if you look at how creatine works, it saturates the muscle cell.
Sure.
And so you can only hold so much creatine in the muscle and it stays there. And so the fastest way to saturate is to overtake creatine, like maximize. So they would take, 20 grams of creatine a day, and they would try to just force more and more into their muscle, but causes more water retention, causes more stomach problems, causes all of these things. And the water retention is what people would really think that creatine was doing. And they'd like, they gained 10 pounds when they started creatine, and they think they feel huge. I'm sure you get good pumps. Anytime you're holding water, you get a good pump. And so people would think that was just what it was doing, was just water retention. But that's just
besides the pump though, with like, if we take Creagon, 5 different blend, I think it's a 5 blend of creatine.
Yeah, it's 3.
Where is it 3 total?
Yep.
So magnachelate, dicreatine, and regular creatine mono, right? Muscle endurance wise, shouldn't that be a major player, right? You're getting water absorption in the muscles. Like if I was to take a BCAA or a Creagon to get more muscle endurance, wouldn't I rather take Creagon?
Yeah, you would. The muscle endurance would not be like if you're going to run. Like creatine's not going to increase muscular. Yeah, so different type of endurance. But yeah, if you're going to work out with weights or something like that, or you're looking for explosive power, then yeah, you'd want creatine over a BCAA. A BCAA is not going to help with endurance necessarily. It's going to stop the muscular breakdown from being too traumatic. It's kind of the best way you can look at a BCAA and start the recovery process. BCAAs put your body into an anabolic muscle building state, muscle protective state, and stop the ability of your body being catabolic or muscle eating state. And so whenever you don't have the right fuel, or you're pushing hard, or maybe you're training really hard and your muscles are going to get damaged, BCAAs can kind of lessen the damage that happens, but it's not so much endurance.
I don't want to steer away from the Creagon, but I just want to ask really quick while we're on the topic of aminos, though, why do people take them intra-workout? Why are we so focused on intra-workout for BCAAs then?
If they don't have to digest. So if you
There
take
you
something
go.
like a protein, you think protein is a chain of a bunch of amino acids that your body has to cleave individual amino acids into triaminophosphates and things like that. I'm probably using a stupid word. It was probably wasn't the right word, but you're taking
Right.
tripeptides.
Sounds
That's what I'm
sexy.
looking for. Di and tripeptides, 2 and 3 different aminos that are bound together. Then you have to cleave those off into individual aminos and absorb them, where a BCAA is already broken down into just individual aminos. So they absorb very quickly without digestion. So it's almost an instantaneous change in your body. And whenever you're taking them during your workout, you're already starting that recovery process. You're already starting that, putting your body into the proper state while you're working out, so that if your body needs those, it'll use those towards recovery immediately. And you're already maximizing protein synthesis is really what you're looking for. So your body's going to use other amino acids towards muscle recovery or protection, so that you're not damaging the muscle too much.
Sure.
Beautiful.
So you don't want to dig yourself into a hole that's so deep you can't get back out of with your workout. And that's kind of one of those things it can do.
Excellent.
That makes sense. I
Yeah.
think you brought up an interesting point too. You said something about Creatine necessarily being better for lifters.
Yeah.
Not like it's bad for runners or anything. It would
No,
probably
if you're doing sprints, it would be great.
Sure,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
So if you were like, obviously every supplement is beneficial.
For the right
With-
person.
Right.
Yeah.
With that in mind, though, if you had to make like a hierarchy of supplements,
Yeah.
for weightlifting, I remember
Okay.
talking to your dad actually years ago.
Yeah.
And he told me,
Shout out Wayne.
yeah, shout out to Wayne.
No, shout out.
He told me at that time,
He used to have a sweet stash too.
he did actually. He told me at that time, in his opinion, the best 3 supplements to take were protein, glutamine, and creatine. I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Those were glutamine probably at the time was considered to be more important than a
Exactly.
BCAA product. So you have to look at the differences between glutamine and BCAAs in essential amino acids versus non-essential. So the
Sure.
glutamine problem is that they based a lot of their research on intravenous glutamine that's fed to people that were burn victims. So you have what's considered a conditionally essential amino acid. So in certain situations, your body can't make enough glutamine that it becomes conditionally essential, like in a time when your body's been burned and needs to recover very quickly. And glutamine at that time, if given to you through an IV,
Sure.
helps those burn victims recover much faster. But does that correlate to taking glutamine orally, through your stomach for a workout? I don't think so. I think
Right.
glutamine has a lot of benefits. 2 of those benefits, one of them is gut health. I think glutamine's great for gut health, so it's definitely something that people should consider taking, especially like Richie for gut health. Glutamine's a great one; it's protective of that. And the other one is if you're in a keto diet, it
Right.
actually can be taken, so your body can take glutamine and actually turn it into glycogen and store that. It's gluconeogenesis. Your body
Sure.
takes an amino acid, turns it into glucose that you can use, and glutamine's very easily done for that one.
Sure.
And so in those situations, so somebody on keto, which I think might be why glutamine was so popular in the early 2000s,
Right.
kind of the era that you're talking about, it's because people were constantly on keto diets and they weren't taking carbs post-workout.
Sure.
You could get rid of the glutamine and instead have carbs post-workout now, and you would have a much better benefit with carbs versus glutamine. So that's where BCAAs come into the topic of which one are the
Sure.
are the best supplements. I would say 2 of those 3 was correct: protein and creatine for sure. And then I would say either a BCAA or an EAA
Sure.
would be and EAAs just contain the BCAAs.
Sure. I
I was about to
plus
say,
other
EAA is
energy.
both of them, right? You're going to have a lot of glutamine in your
Right,
EAAs.
so-
Yeah,
I mean-
EAA is definitely like
So if I'm
more
hearing
like
you,
a grenade than a
right. So
sniper
if I'm
rifle or
hearing you
whatever.
correctly, once again, they're all beneficial.
Yeah.
But if you were making a hierarchy for a person
Yeah.
trying to gain or make muscle,
Yeah.
protein,
Yep.
creatine, and an EAA or BCAA.
Yeah.
Would be the,
Yeah, those would be my top 3. So those are all foundational supplements, in my opinion. I call those foundation,
Sure.
Supplements. Protein is foundational for muscle recovery. You do have to have all of the amino acids from protein. Your body can produce some of them. That's why some of them are considered non-essential amino acids and others are considered essential amino acids.
Exactly.
From the essential, you have to eat the essentials. From those, your body can produce the non-essentials, but it doesn't mean that your body wants to. So a protein like a whey protein that absorbs really well and digests very easily for people and has a high bioavailability, like we have Nice Authority, helps with that muscle recovery processing. It gives you the EAAs, it gives you the BCAAs, and it gives you the non-essential amino acids. So that's number 1 by far is protein intake.
Sure.
And it's not just an isolate protein like we have. It's also how much beef you take, how much chicken you're eating,
Sure.
how much eggs you're eating. Total protein intake for the day is more important, in my opinion, than just one protein source after a workout, right? Granted, it's going to be the easiest thing for you to do is take a protein shake after your workout. But more important than focusing on just post-workout nutrition is your entire nutrition for the day.
Yeah.
So the number 2 would be creatine, because creatine helps with strength and recovery from workouts. And so that's going to help you make more progress in the gym faster. And if you can gain strength, you're going to gain size faster. And if you gain strength and size, even if you're a woman, it's not going to be bulk. Obviously, that's one of the fun myths. But if you're a woman too, the strength and size that you get, even though it's a minor amount of size, because you're not going to build size like a guy will due to lack of testosterone levels, you will increase your metabolism too.
Yeah.
So that's number 1. What you want is creatine. Number 1 is protein, obviously. Number 2 is creatine, because it helps with strength and muscle size.
Yeah.
And it helps in every way with metabolism and strength and blah, blah, blah. And then number 3 would be EAA or BCAA to kick that recovery process up higher. That could be considered, the optional one that most people would look at as like, well, I could go with a different one. If you eat a ton of protein every day, you're hitting past that 1 gram per pound of body weight.
Which is pretty rare.
Which is pretty rare. Like even these days, like I've been consistently, I ate 300 when I was bodybuilding. High levels, I was eating 400. I pushed to 450 a day. And if you think about 450 grams of protein, 1 pound of beef is about 100 grams. So I was eating the equivalent of 4 to 4.5 pounds of beef a day.
Yeah.
Now it wasn't all beef. There was protein shakes.
Protein shakes.
I got a supplement company, so I'm going to use protein shakes to my advantage there.
Sure.
Richie's little kids screaming in the background. And but I'm going to take protein shakes and stuff. But I was at 450, but 300 was a comfortable level for me. So if you're taking 300 grams of protein a day, you may not need a BCAA or an EAA. At that point, you may say, something like a pre-workout product is more advantageous for me, or a different type of product. Maybe it's a joint supplement, or maybe it's a gut health supplement, or something like that might be more advantageous. A greens product might be more advantageous. So that's, there's debate within that kind of thing. But for the average person that's not hitting 1 gram per pound of body weight or lean body mass, that's the EAA, BCAA is probably one of your most important. If you take it during a workout, you spike muscle protein synthesis, you start the recovery process faster. And then when you take protein post-workout, granted, muscle protein synthesis is already at a maximum level because you're taking an EAA or BCAA. Right. But what you're getting with that protein, you're going to be able to use that protein faster and easier towards recovery, which is more important at that time. So that's why I would say protein, creatine, and then aminos, but more specifically BCAA or EAA. And EAA is just a more complete BCAA.
Sure.
Would you say four is trend?
Yeah, 4 trend, E-ball, Anavar, whatever it is.
I want to throw something at you that I want you to state, because I asked you about this a year ago or something, and I think it's important for people to hear it, because you put you put protein as the number 1, right?
Yes.
And my first question always is, okay, but like food is better for me than this powder. So can you explain to those people the difference in bioavailability of eating chicken for 25 grams of protein versus just getting a 25-gram scoop of protein powder?
Yeah. I mean, chicken's great. I mean, they're not going to be a problem. I'm not going to say if you want to just go strictly chicken after your workout that you're going to have a problem with it, for the most part. But chicken's bioavailability is not as high as whey protein's bioavailability, which is really based off of that EAA, BCAA combination, where if you're looking at bioavailability, there's a digestibility to it. There's protein digestibility, amino acid scores, PDAS, something like that. And then there's the bioavailability, which is really how is your body going to use this protein towards nitrogen retention, towards muscle building, towards muscle protein synthesis. And whey protein scores by far the highest on all of those chains. So if you really look at what you need in a workout setting, you need those nutrients very quickly. The faster you can get those nutrients, the better after a workout or around your workout to feed the muscles. Chicken's going to take a little while to digest. It's going to have those amino acids, but it's not as bioavailable. So 25 grams of protein of whey protein is not equal to 25 grams of protein of chicken. But they're going to be close. It might be a 22 versus a 25 or a 20 versus 25, right? So 20 grams of whey protein might be equal to 25 grams of chicken in terms of muscle protein synthesis and things like that. But the powder is going to work faster. It's going to digest faster, and it's going to boost that muscle protein synthesis much higher to a maximum level, because there's a max level of muscle protein synthesis that your body can hit, starting that recovery process faster. So whey protein is by far more advantageous than chicken, but it's not like you're going to not get results if you eat chicken.
So that kind of makes me think about it like this, right? When I was more into being disciplined with my supplement taking and whatnot back in high school and whatnot, you
work for one now, so
yeah, I know.
the time is right.
I know. I've been meaning to get on that. We'll do that. We'll get on it. We'll get serious about it. We'll make some journal videos. We'll post it on Instagram so you guys.
Gains.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about that this morning. I seen some like bodybuilder posting a video, just like this like hardcore inspirational music in the background. It's just him like doing pull-ups and whatnot.
Yeah,
and I'm like, dude, this annoys me, because it's like, what are you doing other than pulling yourself over a bar?
But if it was a jiu-jitsu guy,
that's what I'm saying.
Somebody out.
That's what I'm saying.
That's awesome.
That's what I'm saying. It's like,
that gets me going.
I don't know if that's more of like I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's just you. It's
just
like
me.
A good
so
leg lock.
That's
Everybody
exactly what I was
stuff.
thinking. Is like, dude, I could choke this motherfucker out.
Yeah.
And so
this goes back to my theory about all you guys hating the bodybuilders and all the bodybuilders hating them.
We did. No.
You just said it out loud.
Well,
you have to. You will find that most people tend to have a favorite bodybuilder that has a similar body shape to them.
Oh,
Yeah,
same with
absolutely.
athlete. Like
Right.
if you're doing
If
a sport and
if you're a tall guy, you're going to have a favorite bodybuilder that's a tall guy. And if you're a short guy, you're going to have, a short guy that's going to be your favorite bodybuilder.
is the guy that I like tall? Callum? Was he tall?
Yeah,
I think Callum's
he's 6. Isn't he
He's
6
not that tall.
foot?
He's probably 6 foot, 6'1".
That's about my size. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but what I was
That's
saying,
not tall.
what I was saying before I got into my little rant about bodybuilders and them being pussies.
No, I'm not going to disagree. It's okay.
Basically, what I was
beauty pageant.
What I was thinking is, I didn't really like casein protein, and the fact of it just didn't dissolve correctly. Like it was always grainy. I hated drinking them before bed.
Yep.
So maybe substitute it for chicken breast because it's not as bioavailable immediately. And you're wanting that slow digestion. Would that be an alternate?
Absolutely. Yeah. Casein protein. So to catch anybody listening up to date, casein protein is one of the milk proteins, but it's the milk protein that digests very slowly. They say that casein protein, because it can kind of ball up in your stomach, it'll actually take, 6 some hours to digest over time and keep you full longer, but also give you a sustained release of amino acids. Now, it doesn't mix very well. It's very thick when you drink it, which is, and if you watch some of the videos when it's mixed with stomach acid, you see it kind of balls up and things like that. That's the advantageous process of casein. You could eat, something fatty is probably the best before bed, to be honest, not carb based, but fat based. So a fatty piece of meat. And the reason I say that is because fat is harder and takes longer for your body to digest than carbs do. So fats take a lot longer for your body to get through. So like a fatty piece of steak or something like that.
Scoop of peanut butter is one of the classics.
Yeah, peanut butter. You can always, people get into this casein versus whey. Should I take whey post-workout and take casein before bed? I mean, you're splitting hairs at that point in time. If you take a whey protein and you mix it with something like peanut butter or a fat source of some sort, that is going to slow the digestion down considerably and the absorption down of the whole thing. And so same with whole food. I mean, any whole food is probably going to digest slower than a casein powder in the first place, if you really want to put it to the test, especially something like a fatty piece of steak, which, I mean, the studies have shown it takes forever for steak to digest and move through your system. I mean, it's a very long process. And if you've had the flu, that food is in your stomach for a lot longer than most people think. Like you throw up some stuff that you're like, man, that was like 2 days ago that I ate that stuff. So the food is not as fast as what most people think, especially something like steak. You go to eat a big steak and you fill yourself up, you're full all day. That just takes a long time to digest.
That's true. Most people don't eat steak at noon, but if you ever want to think if we're true or not, eat a steak at noon.
Yeah, for sure.
Until 7, I bet.
Yeah, fill yourself up. You're not going to want something else for a while. Yeah. But to go back to your point, I would say a meal before bed is one of your best. Eggs, whole eggs would be great before bed. You got the protein, you got the fat. It's going to digest slow. I drink a protein shake personally before bed, but that's just simply out of convenience more than anything else.
How good? Are you you do that every night?
I do it every night. Yeah, simply
like brushing your teeth consistency?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I mix it with fiber, and fiber helps me go to the bathroom nicely.
If you're gonna get in a lot of protein, you're almost guaranteed to have a shake in the morning or in the evening.
Yeah,
that's just how that goes.
Like if you think about when I was eating 450 grams of protein, it was 7 meals a day. I mean, the first thing I did when I got up was eat. The last thing I did before I went to bed was eat.
Were you ever hungry at that point?
Never was hungry. So
does that not take an effect on you?
Yeah, I mean, sure it does.
Or your long-term relationship with food?
Well, I mean, it does change your long-term relationship with food, but not that much. I mean, the biggest thing that I would say it does is when you eat something that tastes really good, because you're ignoring hunger signals, you are not going to stop when you're full. You know, if I'm constantly eating all day long and I'm ignoring when I'm hungry and I'm just eating based off the clock, I'm not developing a connection with my stomach on when I should eat because it needs food. I'm just feeding it based off the clock, which is the way I lived for, almost, 12 to 15 years probably. So until I was 30 and I started doing this stuff and in high school for sure. So not as seriously, but so that is the problem. Yeah, for sure.
I just thought of this, and it's kind of back to slow digesting things to eat before bed.
Mm-hmm.
But my wrestling coach, when I was in like middle school or just starting high school, when I a lot more skinny, probably like 5'10", 113 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
We were just trying to get any type of size on me or any type of weight. So what we do is take like, the shittiest, fattiest ice cream we can get from Walmart, and you mix that in with a protein shake, and then you eat a bunch of corn before it. So the corn would slow down the digestion.
Okay.
And allow like the stuff from the fattiness and all the calories from the shake to get past it. I don't know if that had actually worked or anything.
I don't know if I've ever heard the corn trick. Corn, it does not digest well.
Yeah.
For sure. I don't know if it would slow down. I mean, really, I would say the things that slow digestion down the most are fiber in corn. That's part of why corn doesn't digest, is the fibrous, hole around corn. So like you go and peek in the toilet afterwards, and you're like, man, I had corn yesterday, didn't I? And so that's why.
Such a Midwest
that
Kansas
fibrous part of it.
thing.
Such
Eat
a Kansas
corn.
thing, yeah. Eat corn. But I don't know about the corn thing, but yeah, if you were to add fiber and fat to it, that would slow the digestion down of all of it. Of course, whole food, again, would digest slower than any shake would. But in your situation, you're just talking sheer calories. So it's, ice cream is calories. And so you just need food at that point in time. There's some kids that are just skinny and can eat anything all the time, and they have to almost force feed. Their hunger signals are not matched up to how fast their metabolism is.
See, that's another extreme when you talk about hunger signals that I feel like I kind of deal with, in the fact that I'm so in tune with what my stomach says.
Yeah. Where
there's times I should eat, but I'm just not hungry.
Yeah.
And it's detrimental.
Yeah.
So I feel like you can see extremes both ways on that.
Yeah, there's definitely extremes both ways. So, I mean, there's the people that are eating by the clock are following a plan, and so if you think about it, most of the time I was making people, or myself, when I was working with clients, I was making them follow a plan. You're going to eat this many meals a day. It's going to be 5 meals or 6 meals a day. This is what you're going to have. It takes the guesswork out. That's why, if you eat based off of hunger, there's some guesswork for the most part. And it takes a little bit more of an intuitive approach for you to understand what your hunger signals are versus your cravings are. But if you eat based off of a formula, this specific amount of macros and calories, well, then whenever you don't lose weight, you change the formula slightly, and then, you lose weight. So, or if you're hungry and you're eating a little too much because you're hungry, you just have to, you have to start to listen to your body differently.
There's
in that
just going to
situation.
be a wild lack of consistency too.
Yeah.
If you do, I personally do, and that's why I can say that, because I really don't eat until I'm hungry, and
that's the way you should eat.
Sure. But all I'm saying is that my goal is not to lose or gain weight. I'm just existing.
Sure.
But for people who do want to lose weight or gain weight, you need to be consistent in these things. Like the fluctuations I'm allowing for yourself is just gonna put you in a hole. Yeah.
There was one time whenever I would work with people at the very beginning, and I would tell them that your meal is, X, like, you're going to have 30 grams of protein and, 16 grams of fat and 30 grams of carbs. And this is a meal. And whenever you're hungry, this is what you eat. And then the next time you're hungry, you eat this thing again. And then the next time you're hungry, you eat this thing again. And that could be 10 times a day. If you really wanted to, you could eat that. And that's almost like gauging their amount of calories that they're taking in and where their hunger levels are at for what food they're taking in, for the most part. And you can do it that way and lose weight or gain muscle,
sure,
however you want to. It's just when you're eating based off of hunger, but you don't know what you're eating. You don't have a plan of attack. Like you don't know how much protein or how many carbs or how many fats or something like that. It's harder to lose weight or gain muscle, for sure. And so for simplicity purposes, I think people will follow a plan where this is exactly what I eat every day. And it's a formula, because your calorie expenditure doesn't change that much. If you do the same job every day,
sure.
I'm sitting here in the office half the time. My calorie expenditure is the same. The only thing that really changes that is what do I do after work and do I work out? And on workout days, I would feed myself a little bit more calories, part of the plan.
So this kind of leads me into my other question, which also loops back to last week's podcast. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it now. So you're in tune with what I'm talking about. What we kind of talked about was, can you burn fat and build muscle at the same time.
Yep.
And we kind of went over that, saying it's kind of hard. You got to be in the Goldilocks spot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's possible, but not sustainable is what I would call it.
Now, eating properly and getting the right calories in and right exercise, does fat turn into muscle ever? Because like I said last week, I've seen some crazy transformations in short amounts of time from guys who were particularly heavy, just basically looked like they took the same size they had in fat and just turned it straight into muscle.
Yeah. No, I'd get people that came in the store whenever I was working in the supplement stores, and I would have people say that they needed to turn their fat into muscle. Or they would say, this guy I know stopped working out. And the problem is if you stop working out and you have all this muscle, it just turns to fat. Well, they're two separate tissues.
Sure.
Fat doesn't turn to muscle, muscle doesn't turn to fat. You're talking two completely different things. So what happens is muscle cells get smaller, and so your muscle size will decrease or increase based off of those muscle cells. And the fat cells will also do the same thing, increase or decrease in size. Fat cells also can multiply, where muscle cells, you're kind of born with the amount that you have, where fat cells, they multiply so you can keep gaining fat and keep gaining fat. And once one cell's full, you just create new ones. And so people can keep getting fatter and fatter, where muscle size is really limited to the amount of muscle cells that you have. So no, that's a myth. People tend to mistake what's really going on in your body because they'll see something like what you're talking about, and somebody gets in a really good shape and they think that this guy turned his fat into muscle, or he stopped working out and his muscle turned to fat. No, he just got fat and stopped working out. And that's just.
Hey, you said that we are all, fat cells can multiply, and you said we're stuck with the same amount of muscle cells.
Yep.
Is there anything I can take that would increase the amount of muscle cells that I have by any chance?
Growth hormone's the only thing that people have ever seen that might increase muscle cells and cause more muscle cells. I think it's called
splicing, right? Isn't that what it's doing? It's just splitting the.
I don't know if it's splitting them. I'm not an expert in the area by any means, but for whatever reason, maybe you create new muscle cells, or maybe you split them or something like that. And I think that's one of the reasons that you see bodybuilders that are so much bigger than you've ever seen before, is that the introduction of growth hormone into their regimen. Not only were they taking steroids back in Arnold's day, it's obvious Arnold took steroids and those guys took steroids. Not only are they taking steroids and more than Arnold ever took or anything like that, but they're adding in other compounds like growth hormone and insulin and things like that, which can increase that, amount of potentially. That's the theory. I don't know if it's ever been proven, but the theory is that you create new muscle cells with growth hormone, where typically you're stuck with the amount of muscle cells you have. So if you have a set amount, they can only get so big. And so you're never going to get past that size.
Sure.
Is that why their heart increases?
Yeah, that is one of the side effects. Your heart is a muscle. And if you take growth hormone and insulin and steroids, and you increase the strength of the muscle and you increase the size of the muscle, and all of these different things, is kind of a recipe for cardiomyopathy, which is heart growth.
Hey, my great grandma had the heart size of a basketball, and she lived till I think her 70s. So
it's possible. And that's not a recipe for death, but you have to think about how much extra work it takes for a heart that's bigger to pump and to work. A small little muscle like in a rabbit, beats 1,000,000 miles an hour. But the bigger it is, the slower it can move.
That's what I was thinking. So then that makes it way harder for cardio, huh? So that's probably why you don't see a lot of these big old boys cranking out on the treadmill and all that. It's just not.
Yeah, I don't know about that, to be fair. Just the size itself will make it hard for them to move. I mean, and you're talking like elite level bodybuilders at this point in time. You're talking the Ronnie Colemans and the Phil Heaths and, the people like that, the Jay Cutlers. I don't know who's popular these days.
Can you give me some bodybuilders that are in good shape at old age? Because, I see people like Ronnie Coleman and just completely crippled. And it's like, is it even worth it at that point?
Jay Cutler's still in pretty good shape.
There's plenty of guys that are in fine shape, but Ronnie is a great example of the potential downsides. But there's plenty of guys that look the same. Frank Zane looks totally normal.
Yeah.
Mike Metz, well, I don't think he's alive anymore. I think pretty normal at the end.
Yeah, it just depends on what their expectations are. Dorian Yates looks just fine, but he looks like a normal guy. He's not trying to hold the muscle that he used to have. Where, Jay Cutler is not as old as maybe what you're talking about. He may be in his 50s or something like that. And he's much smaller than he used to be, but he's in pretty good shape.
I was about to say, I think it's all relative too. I mean, I guess Arnold is small I mean, in some ways, but I feel like he's in pretty phenomenal shape for a 70.
Yeah, when you look at him
like,
at 70, like the guy's in great shape.
That's what I mean. Is I think it's.
Most
I'm not saying you're wrong. I think it's a little relative.
This
I
generation,
think RFK is more jacked than Arnold at this point.
RFK's looking pretty good. I don't know if he's in his 70s though. I think he's 60s, right?
Yeah.
the bodybuilders in our world now
There's no
take
drug
more.
test on RFK yet. We don't know what he's on.
Oh, well,
that
wait, you don't
dude-
think Arnold's not on anything at this point?
RFK's on testosterone replacement
Yeah,
therapy
has
for
to.
sure.
I think he
That's
admitted it too.
And, probably some other.
That's what I'm saying. Is
growth hormone
RFK is on
therapy.
GH and Arnold isn't.
Yeah, no, Arnold's on it too for sure.
Yeah, Arnold's definitely on
I
it.
think so. Still,
Absolutely. there's difference
probably
between.
like TRTs.
TRT
That's what I'm saying.
is-
Yeah.
I'm
You're talking the difference between somebody abusing a drug
Yeah,
and somebody
exactly.
using a drug. And so, doctors will put you on a TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, or growth hormone replacement therapy is another one where they'll put you on, just a tiny bit of growth hormone every day because your body stops producing it, just kind of like, or lowers the production, just like it lowers
Sure.
testosterone production. So it keeps you in better shape.
So how would you compare? I mean, obviously, you don't have. You can guess if you would like to, but how would you compare what an average TRT doctor gives you to what you would assume or guess someone like a pro level bodybuilder is taking?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking massive difference.
I totally believe you, and I
Yeah.
understand it's an inexact science, but
But
what do
it's-
you think? A 10% of what you get at TRT?
Less than that. Yeah. So TRT can range, a high level of TRT, say 200 milligrams of testosterone per week. And, lower range is 100,
Sure.
something like that. But most doctors aren't going to go up to 200. A good doctor that wants you to, have a high testosterone level that's still maybe mid, normal range, but it's high, would get you on 200. But that's really depending on how your body metabolizes
Sure.
and uses it. So most bodybuilders on the national level are still taking more than 2,000 milligrams.
Okay, so it is about
of
10,
hormones.
10 times.
It's not necessarily all. So whenever you get down to it, there's all sorts of other hormones that are out there beyond
100%.
just testosterone. And so they may be using, like Richie said, Tren, or they may
Sure.
be using orals like D-Ball or Anavar or, any of those different ones. And then you're bringing in only just some of those. But yeah, I've seen guys in the national level that were taking 3,000 milligrams of different things per week. And that's not that extreme. It is extreme, obviously.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But for those guys, it's not that extreme. In the pro levels, there was a few guys that were never, they weren't the best bodybuilders, but they were known for taking the highest doses because genetics determine everything in this sport. And so, somebody may be able to get a bigger result out of less. Somebody like Ronnie Coleman could take very little and get a massive result out of it. So he may only stay on just low doses in comparison to somebody that was, Craig Titus, who was a guy that was known for taking like 15,000 milligrams a week.
Juice to the gills.
Yeah. Ended up like killing somebody.
We have
He's
an
in prison.
excellent genetic example in today's world. Was Phil Heath dominated for how many years did he win the Olympia? And he would come out and tell you that skip a day, go light on a few days. Oh, well, he's got it, and I'm not trying to discredit how hard it is to win Olympia. So like,
no,
just saying, the man was blessed and he dominated the scene.
Yeah. The one thing you have to know for sure is that all of the bodybuilders are liars about their dosages. So, whatever anybody admits to telling you, just assume it's double that.
Yeah.
So they all lie, every single one of them. And most of them will even lie about taking stuff. So unfortunate reality is that there's a lot of guys. If you look at the built guys at your gym, there's a lot of them that are taking stuff. And you would never guess they're taking stuff,
Bingo.
but they're taking stuff. And that's the truth of it. And those, that doesn't mean that everybody is taking anything by any means. It doesn't mean that you have to take stuff to get into good shape or to do anything like that. It just means that there's always going to be people that do. And once one guy starts doing it and he's buddies with other people and they see his results, it's just like anything else, just starts spreading.
Yeah.
And so it's very common.
You get in the circle,
you'd be amazed at how much some people take that are just an average gym goer. And you're like, yeah, the guy's in good shape, but he's not, doesn't look like a bodybuilder or anything. He could be taking a gram of stuff a week, 1,000 milligrams. And, 5 times the maximum dose of TRT for the most part, and still not looking like a freak in any way. That's where the genetic component comes in. Just like with weightlifting, just like with fat loss, with fat accumulation, with how much muscle you can build. The same thing goes into any sort of hormones or drugs that people are using. And personally, I want to see him in sports. They get rid of him in baseball, they get rid of him in football and things like that. And I'm all about it. I want to see the freaks, man. Now, it may not be the healthiest thing for them to do.
Well,
That's not really up to. I don't care about that right
They're
now.
getting $30 million a year. Do you think I care about what the healthiest
They
thing
get
from the two is?
concussions and all sorts of stuff. I'm like, go for it. You can mess your brain up. You guys can do some other stuff too. I don't care.
Yeah,
Everybody liked baseball whenever they were hitting home runs. Everybody liked it when you saw Mark McGwire, crushing the ball and things like that. And then they tell you that, well, he was taking steroids and that's why. It's like, yeah, that's why I liked watching him.
I don't want to harp on it for more than one sentence. I just want to say they were all fine making money off of it. But the second it was time to put those people in the Hall of Fame that they made all that money off of in the 90s,
Yep.
Yeah. Baseball's
I wonder what the
baseball's messed up
Let's
for
see.
that.
I want to know how much more profitable the 90s were for baseball.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
Just-
probably early 2000s. So we're talking.
This is
I'll
why
know
they're
the
not
word
America's
profitable.
pastime anymore.
Yeah.
You got to account for inflation too. So.
I'll get that fact for you. The prior fact that I looked up was how much older Arnold is in RFK, and it's 7 years.
7. Seven's not bad.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I bet you Arnold taking his shirt off looks pretty good still. So
I would guarantee it, dude. Because he had a different world, man. His physique at the top, at his highest, was better than I think today's entire world. I liked that.
You also have to realize that some people get to a point where they're actually satisfied with their physique, and they get to it and they're like, yeah, I did that. I'm good with it. Other people may never get to that level and they're the old guy that's still trying to stay jacked, like, big in size. And unfortunately, they may notice some sort of health problem come along with it because they're doing things that are not taking care of their heart, or maybe they're still taking, hormones at a level that's not good for them.
That's probably fueled by that BM, right?
Body.
BT,
the body
sorry.
dysmorphic.
Yeah.
It does bring up a good point though. You bring up genetics. You talk about Arnold. I was just watching that documentary. It's like, dude, people talk about steroids and bodybuilding all the time. That guy was enormous at like 16 or 17.
That's the genetic side of it.
doing pretty much curls and push-ups in the Alps.
When you see true genetics, Phil Heath was brought up. Phil Heath is the true genetics. When you see Phil Heath at his first bodybuilding show, had only been working out for maybe a couple years.
People think it's impossible.
And he blew past guys. I knew it. The reason I know this is because my trainer at the time was from Colorado and competed against Phil Heath in maybe his second show. And Phil Heath, when he walked in, everybody knew he won. I mean, and the guy wasn't even taking anything at that time. Of course, the guy that was training me was like, 30s to 40s at the time. And he'd been taking stuff for years and he'd been working out and doing bodybuilding shows since he was like 18 years old or something like that. And Phil Heath walks in and blows past him in 2 years. That's how genetics comes into play.
Yeah.
So not that Phil Heath didn't work hard or didn't follow his diet. But, generally speaking, Phil Heath could get away with doing less work than that guy and blow past him. And that's the truth of it, is that, you start working out. If a group of people worked out, you could follow Phil Heath's diet. You could follow Phil Heath's drug protocol. You could follow his workout protocol, and you will not look like Phil Heath.
It's a really good point that I feel like should be hammered home. You can see a 60-year-old guy that's absolutely jacked, and you have no clue if he's on steroids or not. You can see an absolutely enormous 18-year-old that's absolutely jacked, and you have no clue if he's on steroids. Yeah,
you would never know for sure.
People seem to want to be like, oh, if that guy's big, he's on steroids. Yeah. It's just not that simple.
No, it's not. Now, let's be honest here.
To a point,
there's a size level for sure that's pretty impossible to hit. So you see a big freak, but 2, it is like a needle in a haystack. So you're talking like
100%.
Phil Heath. How many bodybuilding shows have I been to where I've seen bodybuilder after bodybuilder after? I've never seen a Phil Heath. Thousands and thousands of competitors. So 1 out of 1 million would be a Phil Heath that walks in and you're like, damn, that guy looks like he's juicing, and he's not. Now, the other 1 million guys are juicing and don't look like they're juicing. That's the problem.
So to like the novice, what do you think is the telltale sign of someone who does use steroids?
I don't want to say there's a telltale sign, because there's not for the most part. The easy, if I were to say, it would be traps and shoulder caps. Okay. There's a roundness to the shoulders and there's a roundness to the traps that tend to happen when the water retention from taking, hormones alters the way that your body looks. There's a muscle fullness. So if you were to see this guy before and after, that might be different, but never seeing somebody before is almost impossible to say. Now, if you saw this guy and he was 250 pounds at, 5'9", and he's shredded at the same time, mean, it's pretty obvious by itself. You know, I used to have guys that came in the supplement store and would ask me like, you know, about Ronnie Coleman or Jay Cutler or something like that. I'd be like, do you think this guy's on steroids? Like, are you serious?
Right.
Like, you think somebody could hit that level? But they just don't know. And so I think it's a fair thing for people to know that, yeah, there are a lot of people. Your favorite fitness influencer is probably taking hormones that are making this a little bit easier for him. He may be taking illegal fat burners that are making him stay leaner easier. He may just be a genetic freak too, and he was able to get in shape. So, you know, it's not fair to say that your influencer is taking stuff, but it is fair to say that, you know, don't compare yourself or try to, you know, look at somebody else and see where they're at, because their genetics are different. They might be on a drug protocol. They may have way more experience with training. They may be working 10 times harder than you are too.
100%.
The hard work does come into play, but the hard work really is the evening level between people that have the genetics but won't work hard and the people that will bust their ass but don't have the genetics. But unfortunately for somebody like a Phil Heath, like the dude didn't take his diet very seriously and was not known. Like, he's from Colorado. Armbrust Pro Gym is where he worked out most of the time. And you knew a lot of people that watched Phil Heath work out, and he only ever worked out hard when the camera was on. Otherwise, he's just going through the motions. And when he's going through the motions, you might be busting your ass. And he's going through the motions, and he's still going to get better results than you.
100%.
So, you know, some people are born rich. Some people are born with genetics. It's just, you know, everybody's a little different. So that's why it's nice to have a realistic, you know, idea of what really comes into play with people taking hormones and manipulating their body and taking, you know, illegal fat burners like clenbuterol or things like that, or taking thyroid hormones and things. You just can't imagine how much shit a bodybuilder will put in themselves for bodybuilding. It's really crazy. I mean, whenever they would take, like, you could talk about testosterone as one hormone, but you could talk about guys taking 3 or 4 different things just in hormones. Taking something like a thyroid hormone, taking growth hormone, taking insulin if they're trying to build a lot of size. Now, these are high-level bodybuilders, anti-estrogens, and they might, you know, at the same time, they might be taking clenbuterol like a fat burner. So you're talking a freaking kitchen sink.
Your 7th ingredient.
Yeah. It's crazy what they're willing to take. And there's a lot of regular guys that are competing in bodybuilding shows at the local level that are taking all of it. And unfortunately, it's not healthy, you know, but it is part of that. It is part of the sport, you know, and I don't have a problem with it in that regard. You know, I want to see the freaks just as bad as anybody else. I don't care what somebody else takes and what somebody else does with their body. I think if you want to take hormones, you should absolutely be able to take hormones. I really don't think the government should come in and tell you what you can and can't do with your body. I really don't give a fuck. And so, you know, I'm all for it. If you want to do it, go for it. But I do think people need to know.
Acknowledge the risks.
Acknowledge the risks. Acknowledge what's really going on. There are legitimate problems that can come from taking stuff like that. There's legitimate long-term health issues. There's, you know, all sorts of stuff. But, you know,
it's
if
funny
you carpe diem
about the steroid. Go ahead, Brock.
If you attack it from a you know, analytical perspective on what's profitable for sports leagues, so since the early 2000s, the MLB, the average team value has increased by 178%.
Okay.
You want to know what that is for the NFL?
What?
Oh, I can
way higher.
imagine.
Way higher.
300.
About, give or take, about 400,000%.
Wow. That's crazy.
People don't understand how much bigger the NFL is than everything.
People like it when the dudes are jacked and whatnot.
Yeah, it's true. But the NFL has a very strict drug protocol. They're not, it's, you know, there are definitely people getting around it. And there's always going to be a way to cheat, just like Lance Armstrong was doping whenever he was winning the Tour de France. But there's always a way to cheat, and there are people cheating in the NFL, but everybody assumes that it happens, and it's just not likely.
It's weird.
It's very, they're much more strict.
Should very much be in discussion when it comes to injury rehabilitation. Aaron Rodgers has been harping about it recently with his Achilles, and there's a lot of science to support that we really should be thinking about. It's a small 6-month window or 4-month window for these guys to take it. It's not. I think it's beneficial to them, and it's beneficial.
And you see the same
there
thing.
used to be no way to test if you were taking HGH. So it used to be that they could take it and nobody would ever be able to know. I do think they've figured it out since then, that they can tell if they're taking it. Now, do they turn a blind eye? They might turn a blind eye to HGH because it's simply HGH is going to be more recovery based.
Right.
So you would call it HGH, just growth hormone is what it is. But, you know, the growth hormone is going to be more recovery based than anything else. Tendons and ligaments are going to be in better shape. you're going to have less soreness. You're going to be able to compete at a higher level. And I mean, really, when you're talking about longevity of an athlete, that's what you want. I mean, baseball players, especially, they're playing, a ridiculous amount of games. Repetitive injuries happen from using a muscle way too much. And growth hormone is going to be the thing that they're going to use the most.
It's what everybody, and the club owner as well. So the people who invested money in you want you to as well.
I think it's an interesting point, though, because I remember someone talking about that. It was one of those old sports science things. And they were basically insinuating that baseball and basketball actually would probably benefit more from steroids than football. And I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but I think is the point you were making is what he was saying. It's more about the recovery and some of that, like the pitcher argument, for baseball. Obviously, guys are going to get stronger when they take steroids, but
I would say growth hormone more so than steroids. Steroids are hormones.
Right.
Out of all the hormones, testosterone hormone, they would have a benefit from for sure. But growth hormone being the main one, for sure. Yeah.
I feel like it'd be more profitable for them to allow the athletes to do that for these sports leagues. When you got big name guys like Aaron Rodgers out for the year, if you're able to bring him back for the playoffs.
Well, if they cared about that, they'd change the turf too. We're getting into a different conversation there. But I don't think NFL or any professional really cares about the player's health. I think they have to say that. And the moment they have a chance to correct it when they get called on it, they do. But if they really cared, they'd have these things done before.
They would invest money. 100%.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is they would be getting it would be more beneficial for their money to be doing that with Aaron Rodgers. And then you got, for example, Conor McGregor, who's been out of fighting for a year and a half, almost 2 years now, who is out of the USADA pool. And it takes 6 months from entering the pool to be cleared to fight. Well, this dude literally had his tibia and fibia snapped 2 years ago, and he's obviously juicing. Like, you could tell by the way he looks. His head looks bigger. Like
No, I know it's the Barry Bonds thing.
That's typically the growth hormone.
Yeah,
but there can be some water retention with testosterone that gives you kind of a head size.
Yeah,
like bloat almost.
But if you go and look at the top 5 most profitable pay-per-views for the UFC, it's all Conor McGregor fights. So it's in their best interest to be able to juice this dude up and get him back as quickly as possible. And I think we've definitely seen that too, because we've seen people like Dana White and higher ups in the UFC try to go against and make exceptions with USADA to do that. Like, there's a lot of talks with, the UFC not even using USADA anymore. So I think that there might be going that direction in sports, because we're starting to see the benefit. The people are starting to, say, hey, we'd rather see our favorite guys out there, with bigger traps, bigger biceps, and juiced up, performing better than.
Yeah, you may see it in the UFC more so, but I think generally people they just have a negative connotation of it. And I think you also look at things like the home run records and things, and people are like, well, if you're taking steroids, you're going to win a record that these guys didn't have the ability to use those things. So they try to say it's some sort of legitimacy of sports. I'm using the wrong word, but there's some sort of purity of sport.
I would argue that if they can't juice themselves, then you shouldn't be juicing the balls when it's playoff time. You shouldn't be changing the equipment that you use to play baseball then to make it more fun.
There's a reason baseball used to be the most popular sport. Now it's like the 6th.
That's kind of boring.
The juicing balls thing and all that crap is just insane.
The commissioner's old. The fan base is old. I mean, I'll rip on baseball for a whole nother podcast. It's a joke.
They're all kind of boring.
I did want to hark back to steroids, though, because we talked a lot about it today. We talk about, they're willing to put a lot in their body, and they'll spend a lot of money to do so. But if you work in a store for a year or two, you learn that the only thing they're not willing to do, though, these entry-level guys, is spend $15 extra on the E-blocker and milk thistle that we offered them. And then they come back with gyno, and you're like, dude, I mean, if it was a horse tranquilizer, you'd have put it up your ass if you knew it was going to give you a couple inches on your biceps. But the second that I tell you it's going to save you from having gyno surgery.
Yeah. So gyno, for everybody that doesn't know, is whenever you have too much estrogen produced as a man, and you start to create breast tissue. And so you start to get moobs, but actual moobs, not just fat tissue, because there is a difference between fat tissue that gives you a breast look and then actual tissue growth that's painful and things like that. And so that's
like actual breast tissue.
It's actual breast tissue that you grow. And these guys will get gyno surgery, gynecomastia, and they'll get it removed and things like that. And most professional level bodybuilders have already had that removed, and the gland that makes it possible to have that removed and things like that. So they have a different look in their chest than most guys will. It's a different, muscular look than you're ever going to get. But you do bring up an interesting thing about working in the stores. And so what a lot of people don't know is that there was at one point in time, there's not as much anymore, But there still were, relatively recently pro hormones that were sold in supplement stores, which were, kind of like miniature steroids, for the most part. They were designer steroids. They were legal, they were not illegal. But they were essentially doing the same thing. There were different hormones that were out, and and they sold like hotcakes. And for a lot of companies, they were very highly profitable. But the thing you don't realize is some of these biggest companies that are out today started as pro hormone companies, and they started selling pro hormones first. And when you sell a product that's essentially an illegal product, you do have a massive advantage. And they were just doing it during the time when that was less controlled. Nowadays, you see more SARMs, selective androgen receptor modulators, SARMs. They don't work like they don't work like the designer steroids, like the pro hormones used to. Not nearly as effective. Claim that they're safer. I wouldn't trust them. Personally, those are still drugs in a research phase. If you're really saying what's the safest thing that I can take, well, it's probably the thing that they've been taking since the 60s that we know when you take D-ball, what happens. But when you take, Ostarine, that's a SARM, what actually happens when you take Ostarine? There's GW5156 or 516, something like that. And that was, I think, Cardarine or something like that. And I think the studies showed that it actually was starting to cause like a heart valve damage or something. And that was something they sold at supplement stores for a long time. Now, there was a certain point where, the supplement giant stores, my family stores, they stopped selling anything like that. Like at a certain point, it was not worthwhile for us. There's still stores that are out there that'll sell SARMs like GW5156, and they don't care. And it'll say something on the back of the bottle, not for human consumption. That's their bullshit way of trying to get around selling something that's illegal in their stores and hoping that it doesn't matter. One thing you should know, none of them have fucking insurance. You get a problem from this thing, the company's just going to go bankrupt and nothing's going to happen. But two, just because it's sold in a supplement store like that doesn't mean it's safe. There's the supplement companies. That's one of the reasons I started NutriAuthority, because supplement companies are just lying motherfuckers most of the time. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care what's in their products. If they could get away with putting half sugar in their proteins and to make it taste better and still say it had all protein in there, they would do it. And they have done it in the past. If they wanted to put Adderall as a drug in their pre-workout so that you'll feel more focused, they will do it, and they have done it. If they want to put Meridia in their fat burner so that you lose weight faster, so that you feel like it's a crazy fucking product, they will do it, and they have done it in the past. So that was one of the reasons that I created NutriAuthority, was because there were so many lying companies out there that not only created bullshit products that didn't work, but because they also don't give a fuck about you and they just want to make money. Now, some people would come in the store and they would say, man, give me the thing that's like about to get banned. Like, give me that thing. And there's people that always, just like people that want to use steroids, will always want the thing that's gray area or black market or something like that. I say to those guys, go find those things. The supplement industry has a bad reputation and because of these things. And there's still supplements that are doing things that, if it's a small fly-by-night company and it looks too good to be true and it seems too good to be true, it is too good to be true. That was if I got a protein powder years ago and I would taste it from a company I'd never heard of, and I would taste it and I'd go, this doesn't taste like protein. I didn't bring the product into the store because I knew it wasn't protein. Like, I'm not going to go send that off for a third-party test. I'm just going to not sell it because it was too good to be true. With new flavoring protocols, flavoring, that's added to products now has been advanced so much that if you try hard enough, you can make a product taste pretty good. With most ingredients, like our protein, tastes phenomenal. That's because flavoring has improved over the last 10 to 15 years drastically. Yeah. And you can also play with the flavoring to a higher level where you can get a good tasting product. I remember
there was just Optimum Nutrition chocolate and vanilla, it seemed like.
Yeah, there was a lot, and they didn't taste that good.
Maybe a strawberry. Yeah. It was like the wild card flavor a decade ago.
I'd like to point
nowadays,
out, speaking of Optimum.
Nowadays, they don't taste as good because they don't care. It costs more money. Flavoring, like if you think you're selling millions and millions of bottles a year, if you're saving 25 cents on your flavoring because it's just a little less, and you're a massive company that knows that no matter what, you're going to sell millions of bottles, like why would you put extra money into it? You're just going to save yourself margins. It's kind of like we were talking about with peanut butter jars on the bottom and how they're raising the bottom up on the peanut butter jars these days so that you don't realize that it's still the same size jar, but you're getting, instead of 40 ounces, you're getting 36 ounces, or something that. Over millions of bottles, tens of millions of peanut butter bottles, how many millions are they saving themselves? So there's a lot of that.
But it's not just the fly-by-night guys. So, and it's not Optimum, but they reminded me of this, and I won't specifically name drop brands, but People that are that big in our industry and that dominant have been caught with massive recalls for cheating and spiking their products. So it ain't even just the lower guys, you know. I mean, we've had some of our top dogs in the industry do this to their own people.
Yes. Yeah, there are many companies that if they can lie on their label, they're gonna lie on their label, and there needs to be, you know, harsher penalties for that kind of thing. To be fair, the regulations already exist. You know, it's not that the government needs to step in and tell everybody how to do everything all the time. It's that if you get caught doing that stuff, we should just assume it was on purpose instead of just saying, oh, it was an accident. You know, one of the products I was talking about with the fat burner, the pharmaceutical fat burner, I won't name the company. I don't need to get into a fight with anybody. They just said it was this was a fraudulent group of bottles that came from China or something like that. I'm like, bullshit, bro. We knew once you changed that label, and we were ordering direct from your company. We knew when that label changed that this was a different product. And I kept getting people coming in after, it just doesn't feel the same. It just doesn't, you know, I'm still hungry. I took one of those pills and I couldn't even eat after my workout. It was so strong.
Oh, geez.
And it's just, it's crazy what people are willing to do and what they're willing to put into their products.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of regulation and no enforcement.
Yes,
in some of those industries,
it's already illegal to do these.
That's
things.
what I mean.
Yeah.
Is that it's kind of like, you know, making murder illegal,
but it's just like it's just a slap on the wrist.
Popping up still.
Yeah, if murder's illegal and they're just like, well, just don't do it next time.
Yeah,
okay? That's kind of what they're doing to these supplement companies. You just don't, you know, your products came back as amino spiked or they, you know, had, you know, less protein in there than what you claimed. It was only 15 grams of protein. I just don't, you know, you have a chance to correct this. Don't fuck it up next time, okay? Well, if you took that CEO and you made that CEO go to prison for it, I bet you that shit would never happen again. Yeah. So if you told me my ass was on the line, if we didn't have correct labels, I would absolutely be guaranteeing those labels were correct.
To be an enormous lack of accountability.
I will say I know a couple guys who went to prison and are still swinging away playing ball just as hard as they were beforehand. Not that I agree. We definitely need to strict it up on it, but it's just crazy.
Yeah, sometimes the juice is worth the squeeze, you know, to quote Marquez. Going to the federal pound me in the ass prison for a few $1 million.
Is that two he's been featured on now?
I think so.
That's Xbox Live prisons, federal prison. Dude.
I liked Marquez. He was a good
guy. So we talked about, leg day and whatnot.
Yep.
So that was last week. And I have another similar question.
Yeah.
Cardio.
Okay.
Everybody hates doing cardio.
Yep.
Is there like a good way to do it that like makes it, I don't know, more appealing? Because the only way I can think about doing it, the only way I do it is when I, roll live or spar live jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
That's my only form of cardio that I get. I mean, you're not going to see me going on a jog. You're not going to see me running. I might go take my dogs for a walk, but yeah, that's about it.
Well, it depends on what you're trying to get from cardio. So if you're trying to get into better cardiovascular shape, there's no other way to do it than cardio, But if you're trying to lose body fat, then you don't necessarily have to do cardio, right? So it kind of depends on where the person's coming from, because a lot of people think that cardio is the only way to lose body fat. I think just naturally across the United States, people are like, I'm going to go for a run because I'm trying to get lean. And it's like, well, that's not really what you need to do to lose body fat. You can lose body fat without cardio. Now, you can't get into better cardiovascular shape without it. You're not going to be better at running if you don't run. And for jiu-jitsu, you probably would improve your jiu-jitsu by doing some sort of running and that kind of thing. If you feel gassed or you feel like your cardiovascular shape's not good enough, you could do that outside without, having to roll more or something like that. You could do sprints or something like that to really boost cardiovascular shape. And there's lots of benefits for cardio, in terms of heart health and things like that. So something that should be done, but depends on why you're doing it. If your motivation is to do it for fat loss, you don't have to do cardio. You can lift weights and modify your diet and you will lose fat. And in fact, you will boost your metabolism more by lifting weights than by doing cardio.
I've always viewed it as if your goal is to change the way you look, cardio is not probably the best way to do it or the easiest way, the fastest way. For some reason, it seems like the conventional wisdom was you want to get smaller, do cardio.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But most people when I talk to nowadays, when there's talking about getting into lifting, they want to change the way their body looks.
Yeah.
And that is going to be much quicker and more effective with weightlifting than it is with cardio.
By far, yeah.
I think, once again, like Jared said, nothing wrong with cardio. Cardio is great for your heart health, and it definitely can make you smaller. You'll definitely lose weight at the end of the day, but I think it's more effective weightlifting is in a lot of ways to change the way your body looks, if that is your specific goal.
Let me throw this
Well, you
at
have a
you,
lot of
John.
different
You said
Right.
it makes you go to weightlifting to make you to look better. You think cardio helps people feel better? Like that immediate.
100%. I think they both can definitely help you feel better.
Mhm.
There's going to be endorphins either way, I think. And I don't think there's anything wrong with cardio. Like I said, I just think if you're trying to change the way you look or change the way you feel, personally, I think it would be almost quicker to do weightlifting. But they're both great.
Yeah. They do two different goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, two different goals. But you can feel better weightlifting, and I think you would. It depends on what you mean by feel better. Being stronger, especially an older person, would get a lot more out of weightlifting than running or something like that. I mean, you're going to strengthen your tendons and ligaments and muscles, where running's not going to do that. You're also going to increase cardiovascular health with weightlifting too, not to the point cardiovascular training does, but you will increase heart health. And you will increase bone density is another big one that, if you are putting a heavy load on your bones, your body does have to respond. And as bones get weaker as you get older, it would be more advantageous for somebody like that to lift with weights. Yeah. But at the same time, that doesn't mean don't do cardio. It just means that if you're putting an importance on one out of two, weightlifting is more important. And it does change the body shape a lot more. When you build muscle, even if you have a little fat on you, that fat looks better. If you have a muscle underneath the fat and you can get a shape to it, it looks a lot better for that. But you'll definitely feel better from lifting weights than you will from running, unless your problem is like what I was talking to Brock about, unless you feel like you're gassed out and you need to increase that kind of cardiovascular health, then, go run. There's not anything better than that kind of training.
I think we're both saying the same thing, that like they're both great. It just totally depends on what your end goal is. And it's going to be a lot of one or the other a lot of times.
I was alluding to like runner's high and like those kind of, I never had it. So I don't know. I'm like, people say they go running, they're like, I just felt like I achieved nirvana out there. I'm like, wow.
There may not be a lifter's high like that, because I've never experienced a runner's high like what you're talking about. I think you have to get to a certain, you have to get past.
I'd have to run more
the 2 mile range. You have to get to the point where you just don't hate yourself when you're running the whole time for that to happen. But there are definitely endorphin changes whenever you lift weights, and so you will have the mental change where you will feel better. I don't know if it's the same high that people are talking about. I think people, when they're running and they get to a certain level of conditioning and ability to run, get to a point where it's like they actually just feel great when they're running. And that's the endorphin rush that they're getting during that run, where, I felt pretty fucking good when I've been lifting weights too, especially, when you get the pump going.
Yeah. And you're looking in the mirror and you're like, son of a bitch, dude. Yeah.
The veins popping out in your arms. You're like, damn, bro. Looking good.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I think they're both can be really effective tools to reach your goals.
Yeah, it's not one or the other by any means, but you're gonna cardio is not as good as
there's nothing more flattering than the gym mirror. There never will be.
Oh yeah.
That is definitely the truth.
I wouldn't know.
Well, you can get, the time is right.
I'm telling you, that's why I'm going to get jacked.
Look at all the newbie. Think about all the newbie gains you'd be getting.
I know. That's what I'm thinking about. Especially if I just took a bunch of Dianabol.
You could just think about how many people you could choke out so much faster.
I know. Well, it's not even that.
Leg locks would be lethal.
How many people per capita you could be choking out, dude, with all your gains, man?
See, I see all these bodybuilders. The only thing they got on me is size. So if I get that size, they got nothing on me.
Yeah, the size doesn't matter in the fights. So we all know.
I'll tell Bradley Martin that, dude. He's been 260 in everybody.
A race for last. MMA guys versus the bodybuilders versus the CrossFitters. People who don't work out are laughing at all of you. Just know that.
The battle of CTE or heart problems.
Laughs and lack of injuries.
Yeah, they're all mental in their own way. Honest.
One side kills their wives because they got head problems, or the other one just has a heart attack in front of their wife.
That's possible too. That has happened. There's a lot of those going on in the bodybuilding industry.
I don't think either are the healthiest way to go for longevity.
No, longevity probably not.
Like play tennis or golf if you want to do that.
You can still lift weights. You just don't have to take hormones.
Hey, honestly, I don't even think golf is safe because you had Tiger Woods with those back problems for a while, or was that more his due to his lack of driving ability?
I don't know. Was he beating his wife too, or something?
I don't know. I think he just cheated on her.
I was about to say cheating on her. That's where his back problems. He was hitting so many different chicks per town. It was
Driving
back
some
out.
really rough mug shots from Tiger Woods, and I was like, man,
Didn't he drive his car off
this
the
looks
cliff?
bad.
Something like that.
Like, yeah,
Wrecked it or something.
that's a tough look.
Dude, when you're pulling chicks just off of your drive on a golf course, you got to have a lot of confidence, dude. Like when you know chicks are
It's
coming
just
up to you about your golf game,
I don't know. I
Just
think
money.
I think it's the confidence.
it's just the
thing.
money
I
and the
think money,
swing.
I think money and confidence have to do a lot. Have
If
to
it's
do a
just
lot
the
with
money,
it.
it kills it for me, brother. If it's about the game and chicks are after him for that beautiful recovery game he had,
I'm sure there are people that are chasing the golf swingers. You know, just like the badge bunnies that are out there for cops. I'm sure there's some golf bunnies out there.
yeah. Badge bunny is
There's
an
all
excellent word I've heard in a while.
Badge bunnies, they're all out there. Some chicks just love cops. And so
Man in uniform.
Or like just men of that attitude, like military men or like cops.
Military,
Like they're all like
yep.
the same. They're
Yeah.
same. Like
I'm sure there's groupies in anything.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I think that wraps up our episode 3 pretty well.
That's right.
We made it to week 3.
Heck yeah, bro.
I thought we'd make it through halfway through week 1, so we are doing good.
Yeah, no stopping us.
I would
stop
like to
this
take an
now.
opportunity to thank everybody for cranking one out with the Nut Club.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you
guys. Thanks for coming with us.
Thank you for cranking it out with the Nut Club.